The day started like any other at the bustling international airport. People from all walks of life hurried through terminals, dragging suitcases behind them, checking their watches, and clutching boarding passes tightly in their hands. Among these travelers was Marcus Thompson, a man who blended seamlessly into the crowd despite his quiet air of authority. Dressed in a tailored navy suit with polished shoes, he carried himself with an understated confidence that made him stand out without drawing too much attention. Marcus wasn't just another passenger on Flight 427 to London. He was the CEO of Skyline Airways, the airline responsible for this very flight. But no one would have guessed it by looking at him. He didn't travel with an entourage or demand special treatment. Instead, he preferred flying incognito, sitting among regular passengers to observe how things ran on the ground, or rather, in the air. For Marcus, these flights were more than just business trips. They were opportunities to stay connected to the heart of his company and ensure everything operated smoothly. As he approached the gate, Marcus couldn't help but notice the energy around him. Families with children laughed nervously as they juggled carry-ons and snacks. Business travelers typed furiously on laptops while waiting in line. And then there were the flight attendants, dressed in crisp uniforms, moving efficiently between passengers, answering questions and guiding people to their seats. Everything seemed normal, until Marcus stepped onto the plane. He found his assigned seat in business class and settled in, placing his briefcase under the seat in front of him. As he adjusted his jacket, a young woman approached him with a clipboard in hand. It was Laura Campbell, one of the flight attendants assigned to this section. She looked frazzled, her eyes darting around the cabin as if she were juggling a dozen tasks at once. Her smile was polite but strained as she greeted Marcus. "Good afternoon, sir," she said quickly. "Can I get you anything before we take off?" Marcus returned her smile warmly. "Just a glass of water, please," he replied, keeping his tone friendly and relaxed. Laura nodded briskly and turned away, already distracted by another passenger calling her name. A few minutes passed, but the water never arrived. When Marcus pressed the call button near his seat, hoping to remind her, Laura reappeared, but not with the drink he had requested. Instead, she seemed irritated, her patience clearly wearing thin. "Is there something else?" she asked, her voice clipped. Marcus raised an eyebrow slightly, surprised by her tone. "I just wanted to follow up on the water I asked for earlier," he explained calmly. Laura hesitated for a split second, then forced another tight smile. "We're about to take off soon, so I'll bring it right after," she said dismissively, turning away before Marcus could respond. What struck Marcus most wasn't just the delay, it was the attitude behind it. There was an edge to Laura's words, a subtle shift in tone that felt unwarranted. He brushed it off initially, attributing her behavior to stress or a long day. After all, working in aviation wasn't easy. Flight attendants dealt with difficult passengers, unpredictable schedules and high-pressure environments daily, but something about the way she spoke to him nagged at him. It wasn't until later, when Marcus overheard a snippet of conversation between Laura and another passenger, that things began to click into place. The man next to him leaned over and asked casually, "Everything okay? You seemed upset with that gentleman earlier." Laura glanced toward Marcus, lowering her voice but failing to mask her irritation completely. "Some people think they're entitled to everything," she muttered, rolling her eyes slightly. While she didn't explicitly mention Marcus, the implication hung heavy in the air. At first, Marcus felt a flicker of anger. Was this really happening? Had he been singled out because of how he looked? Or was he reading too much into a simple misunderstanding? Still, he decided not to escalate the situation immediately. Instead, he pressed the call button again, determined to address the issue professionally. When Laura returned, her expression hardened further. "Yes?" she snapped, clearly annoyed now. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor, please," Marcus said evenly, maintaining his composure despite the tension building inside him. Laura froze for a moment, caught off guard by the request. Then her cheeks flushed red and she stammered, There's no need for that. I'll bring your water right away." But Marcus shook his head gently. "I appreciate that, but I'd still like to speak with someone in charge. With that, Laura turned on her heel and marched toward the front of the cabin, leaving behind a palpable sense of unease. Passengers nearby exchanged glances, whispering to each other about what had just transpired. Some looked sympathetic toward Marcus, while others seemed curious, or even entertained, by the drama unfolding before them. Little did anyone know, this seemingly minor conflict was about to reveal far bigger truths, not just about the individuals involved, but about the values of the organization they represented. As Laura hurried toward the front of the cabin, her mind raced with a mix of panic and disbelief. She couldn't believe what was happening. Or rather, she didn't want to believe it. How had a routine interaction spiraled so quickly out of control? Her heart pounded as she approached the lead flight attendant, Sarah, who was busy helping another passenger stow their luggage in the overhead compartment. "Sarah," Laura whispered urgently, pulling her aside. "There's a problem in business class." Sarah turned to face her, eyebrows raised. "What kind of problem?" she asked, her tone calm but firm. As the senior crew member on board, she was used to handling mid-flight crises, whether they involved unruly passengers or mechanical issues. This, however, seemed different. Laura hesitated, glancing back toward Marcus's seat. "One of the passengers is being difficult," she said carefully, choosing her words to avoid sounding defensive. "He keeps pressing the call button and making demands. I tried to handle it, but now he wants to speak to someone in charge." Sarah frowned slightly. "Did you explain that we're preparing for takeoff? We can address his concerns once we're airborne." "Well," Laura trailed off, suddenly feeling uneasy about admitting the full extent of what had happened. She knew she hadn't handled the situation well, but confessing that she had been dismissive and possibly rude felt like digging herself into an even deeper hole. Still, there was no turning back now. He requested something simple, a glass of water. But when I told him we'd bring it after takeoff, he pressed the button again. Then he said he wanted to talk to you. Sarah studied Laura closely, sensing that there was more to the story than she was letting on. "Okay," she said finally. "Let me go see what's going on." With that, Sarah made her way down the aisle toward Marcus's seat. Laura followed a few steps behind, lingering near the curtain separating business class from economy. She watched nervously as Sarah greeted Marcus with a warm, professional smile. "Good afternoon, sir," Sarah began. "I understand you wanted to speak with me?" Marcus nodded politely, his expression calm but serious. "Yes, thank you. There seems to have been a misunderstanding with one of your colleagues. I only asked for a glass of water, but unfortunately, the interaction became unnecessarily confrontational." Sarah glanced at Laura, who shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. "I'm very sorry to hear that," Sarah replied sincerely. "Could you tell me exactly what happened so we can resolve this properly?" Before Marcus could respond, Laura stepped forward impulsively, unable to stay silent any longer. "I wasn't rude," she blurted out, her voice rising slightly despite her attempt to remain composed. "I explained that we were busy preparing for takeoff, and he kept insisting on speaking to a manager. It's not my fault if some people feel entitled to special treatment." The moment the words left her mouth, Laura realized her mistake. The cabin fell eerily quiet as nearby passengers stopped talking and turned their attention to the unfolding drama. Even the hum of pre-flight activity seemed to fade into the background. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly, but instead of reacting angrily, he simply leaned back in his seat and regarded Laura with a steady, unreadable gaze. "You think I feel entitled?" Marcus asked quietly, his tone measured but tinged with disappointment. "Do you know who I am?" Laura blinked, caught off guard by the question. "No, sir," she admitted cautiously, though her tone suggested she thought it irrelevant. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black card holder. From it, he retrieved a business card embossed with the Skyline Airways logo and slid it across the tray table toward Laura. On the card, printed in bold letters, were the words, "Marcus Thompson, Chief Executive Officer." For a split second, time seemed to stand still. Laura stared at the card, her face draining of color as the reality of the situation crashed over her like a tidal wave. Her knees felt weak and she swayed slightly where she stood. Beside her, Sarah gasped audibly, clutching the edge of the seat for support. "You're the CEO?" Laura stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hands trembled as she looked up at Marcus, who remained seated, his expression unchanged. "Yes," Marcus confirmed gently. "And while I don't expect special treatment, I do expect professionalism from everyone on this team." The weight of his words hit Laura like a freight train. In that moment, all the excuses she had been mentally rehearsing evaporated. There was no denying it anymore. She had treated a passenger poorly, not just any passenger, but the man at the very top of the company hierarchy. Worse still, her earlier comments about entitlement had carried an unmistakable hint of prejudice, implying that Marcus's demeanor stemmed from arrogance rather than genuine concern. I'm so sorry," Laura managed to choke out, tears welling up in her eyes. I didn't realize." Marcus held up a hand, silencing her before she could continue. "It's okay," he said softly. "Mistakes happen, but let's use this as an opportunity to learn and grow, both individually and as a team." His response took everyone by surprise. Rather than lashing out or demanding immediate consequences, Marcus chose to diffuse the tension with grace and understanding. His composure in the face of such a personal affront earned him murmurs of approval from the surrounding passengers. Some nodded approvingly while others exchanged knowing glances, impressed by his leadership and restraint. Meanwhile, Laura retreated to the galley, overwhelmed by shame and regret. She replayed the incident over and over in her mind, each recollection amplifying her embarrassment. What must the other passengers think of her, and how would her supervisors react once the plane landed? For the remainder of the boarding process, she avoided eye contact with anyone, focusing intently on her tasks in an effort to regain some semblance of control. Back in the cabin, Marcus returned to his seat, lost in thought. He understood that Laura's behavior likely stemmed from stress and fatigue rather than malice. Still, the encounter served as a stark reminder of the biases that persisted even within organizations committed to diversity and inclusion. As the CEO of Skyline Airways, Marcus had worked tirelessly to create a culture of respect and fairness. Yet moments like this proved that there was still work to be done, not just within his company but across society as a whole. As the engines roared to life and the plane taxied down the runway, the atmosphere aboard Flight 427 remained charged with tension. Passengers whispered among themselves, speculating about what might happen next. Would Laura lose her job? Would Marcus demand disciplinary action? Or would this incident serve as a catalyst for meaningful change? For now, the answers remained uncertain. But one thing was clear. The events of this flight would leave a lasting impact on everyone involved, and perhaps on the future of Skyline Airways itself. As the plane climbed higher into the sky, the hum of the engines filled the cabin, masking the heavy silence that lingered among the passengers. Marcus sat quietly in his seat, staring out the window at the clouds drifting past. Though he appeared calm on the surface, his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The confrontation with Laura replayed in his head like a loop, each detail sharp and vivid. He thought about how quickly the situation had escalated, and how it could have been handled differently by both parties. For Marcus, this wasn't just about being disrespected or singled out because of his race. It was about something much bigger: accountability, empathy, and leadership. He knew that as the CEO of Skyline Airways, his actions, or lack thereof, would set the tone for how the company responded to moments like this. If he let Laura's behavior slide without addressing it, it would send a message that such attitudes were acceptable. But if he acted too harshly, it might discourage others from owning up to their mistakes and learning from them. Striking the right balance was crucial. Meanwhile, word of the incident spread through the cabin like wildfire. Passengers whispered behind cupped hands, their voices hushed but animated. Some expressed sympathy for Marcus, commending him for handling the situation with dignity. Others criticized Laura, calling her behavior unprofessional and unacceptable. A few even speculated about whether this would lead to a public scandal for Skyline Airways, wondering how the company planned to manage the fallout. At the front of the plane, Sarah, the lead flight attendant, pulled Laura aside during a brief lull in service. Her expression was firm but not unkind as she spoke in a low voice. "Laura, I need you to focus for the rest of this flight," she said gently but firmly. "We'll deal with everything once we land, but right now your job is to do your duties professionally. Can you handle that?" Laura nodded, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I never meant for this to happen. I was stressed and I don't know what came over me." Sarah placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I understand that everyone has bad days, but we can't let our personal frustrations affect how we treat others, especially not when we're representing Skyline Airways. Just take a deep breath and try to reset. We'll figure this out together." Though Laura appreciated Sarah's support, she couldn't shake the overwhelming guilt gnawing at her. Every time she passed Marcus's seat while serving drinks or checking on passengers, she felt her stomach twist into knots. She avoided meeting his gaze, instead focusing intently on her tasks, hoping to make herself invisible. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the reality of what had happened, or the knowledge that her career might be hanging by a thread. Back in business class, Marcus continued to observe the dynamics around him. He noticed the subtle shifts in energy among the passengers, the way some glanced nervously toward Laura whenever she walked by. He also saw moments of kindness, the elderly woman who patted Laura's arm comfortingly after receiving her meal, or the businessman who offered her a small smile when she refilled his drink. These gestures reminded Marcus that people were complex. They made mistakes, yes, but they were also capable of growth and redemption. As the hours passed, Marcus found himself reflecting on his own journey. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood, he had faced countless obstacles and prejudices. There were times when doors seemed closed to him simply because of the color of his skin. Yet he refused to let those barriers define him. Instead, he worked tirelessly to build a better future, not just for himself but for others who might face similar challenges. Skyline Airways was born out of that determination. From its inception, Marcus envisioned the airline as more than just a business. He wanted it to be a beacon of inclusivity, a place where employees and passengers alike felt valued and respected regardless of their background. Over the years, he implemented policies and initiatives aimed at fostering diversity and understanding within the company, and while progress had been made, incidents like today's proved that there was still work to be done. By the time the pilot announced their descent into London, the tension in the cabin had eased somewhat, though it hadn't disappeared entirely. Passengers began gathering their belongings, chatting casually about plans for the trip ahead. For many, the drama of earlier felt like a distant memory, a story to share with friends or family once they arrived at their destination. But for Marcus and Laura, the weight of the day's events remained ever present. As the plane touched down and taxied to the gate, Marcus waited patiently in his seat, allowing other passengers to disembark first. He didn't want to create a scene or draw unnecessary attention to himself. When most of the cabin had cleared, he stood and made his way toward the exit, where Sarah and another senior crew member were waiting to escort him to a private lounge. Inside the lounge, Marcus was greeted by members of Skyline Airways' corporate team, including the head of Human Resources and a regional manager. They had been alerted to the incident mid-flight and were eager to address the situation promptly. After exchanging pleasantries, they invited Marcus to share his perspective on what had transpired. "I'm not here to seek retribution," Marcus began, his voice steady and measured. "What happened today was unfortunate, but it's also an opportunity for us to learn and improve. Laura's behavior was unprofessional, yes, but I believe it stemmed from stress and unconscious bias rather than malice. Instead of punishing her, I'd prefer to see her undergo training on diversity and inclusion. Let's help her grow from this experience." The executives listened intently, nodding in agreement. They admired Marcus's approach, recognizing that his decision to prioritize education over punishment aligned with the values Skyline Airways sought to embody. Together, they outlined a plan to ensure that Laura received the necessary support and guidance moving forward. Before leaving the airport, Marcus took a moment to speak directly with Laura. She stood before him, visibly nervous, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Tears welled up in her eyes as she struggled to find the words to apologize again. "Mr. Thompson, I truly am sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I let my emotions get the best of me, and I failed to treat you with the respect you deserve. Please believe me when I say I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Marcus regarded her kindly, his expression softening. "Thank you for saying that," he replied. "We all make mistakes, Laura. What matters is how we choose to move forward. I trust that you'll use this experience to become a better version of yourself, not just as a flight attendant, but as a person." With those words, Marcus turned and walked away, leaving Laura standing in stunned silence. Though the road ahead wouldn't be easy, she felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to turn this painful lesson into something positive. As she watched him disappear into the crowd, she resolved to prove that she was worthy of the second chance he had given her. As the wheels of Flight 427 touched down on the tarmac at Heathrow Airport, a collective sigh of relief seemed to ripple through the cabin. For Laura Campbell, however, the landing brought no sense of peace. Her hands trembled as she helped passengers retrieve their belongings from overhead bins, her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. The confrontation with Marcus Thompson replayed in her head like a broken record, each memory amplifying her guilt and shame. Once the last passenger had disembarked, Laura lingered in the empty cabin, staring out the window at the bustling airport below. She felt utterly defeated, as though the weight of her actions had crushed her spirit. How could she have been so careless, so dismissive, and worst of all, so prejudiced? Though she hadn't intended to offend anyone, her behavior had revealed biases she hadn't even realized she harbored. It was a sobering realization, one that left her questioning not only her professionalism, but also her character. In the days that followed, Laura found herself consumed by self-reflection. Skyline Airways wasted no time addressing the incident, launching an internal investigation, while ensuring that Marcus's recommendations were implemented promptly. As part of the process, Laura was required to attend mandatory training sessions focused on diversity, inclusion, and unconscious bias. At first, she approached these sessions reluctantly, dreading the discomfort of confronting her own shortcomings. But as the workshops progressed, something remarkable began to happen. Laura started to change. The trainers leading the sessions were skilled at creating safe spaces for open dialogue. They encouraged participants to share personal stories, discuss challenges they faced in their daily lives, and examine how societal norms influenced their perceptions of others. For Laura, this was both eye-opening and humbling. She listened intently as colleagues from diverse backgrounds recounted experiences of discrimination and microaggressions they had endured, not just at work, but throughout their lives. Their courage inspired her to confront her own biases more honestly. One particularly impactful exercise involved role-playing scenarios where participants practiced responding to difficult situations with empathy and understanding. During one session, Laura played the role of a frustrated passenger who felt neglected by a flight attendant. As she delivered her lines, channeling the frustration she had often witnessed in travelers, she suddenly understood why small gestures, like offering a glass of water or simply acknowledging someone's presence, could mean so much. It wasn't just about fulfilling requests. It was about making people feel seen and valued. Outside of the training room, Laura took additional steps to educate herself. She read books about racial inequality, watched documentaries exploring systemic racism, and joined online forums dedicated to fostering inclusive workplaces. Each new piece of information deepened her awareness and reinforced her commitment to becoming a better version of herself. Slowly but surely, she began to see the world, and her role within it, through a different lens. Meanwhile, Marcus Thompson returned to his duties as CEO of Skyline Airways, using the incident as a catalyst for broader organizational improvements. He called a company-wide meeting to address the issue head-on, emphasizing the importance of treating every individual with dignity and respect. Our passengers trust us to carry them safely to their destinations, he told employees gathered via video conference, the patient. As the wheels of Flight 427 touched down on the tarmac at Heathrow Airport, a collective sigh of relief seemed to ripple through the cabin. For Laura Campbell, however, the landing brought no sense of peace. Her hands trembled as she helped passengers retrieve their belongings from overhead bins, her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. The confrontation with Marcus Thompson replayed in her head like a broken record, each memory amplifying her guilt and shame. Once the last passenger had disembarked, Laura lingered in the empty cabin, staring out the window at the bustling airport below. She felt utterly defeated, as though the weight of her actions had crushed her spirit. How could she have been so careless, so dismissive, and worst of all, so prejudiced? Though she hadn't intended to offend anyone, her behavior had revealed biases she hadn't even realized she harbored. It was a sobering realization, one that left her questioning not only her professionalism, but also her character. In the days that followed, Laura found herself consumed by self-reflection. Skyline Airways wasted no time addressing the incident, launching an internal investigation while ensuring that Marcus's recommendations were implemented promptly. As part of the process, Laura was required to attend mandatory training sessions focused on diversity, inclusion, and unconscious bias. At first, she approached these sessions reluctantly, dreading the discomfort of confronting her own shortcomings. But as the workshops progressed, something remarkable began to happen. Laura started to change. The trainers leading the sessions were skilled at creating safe spaces for open dialogue. They encouraged participants to share personal stories, discuss challenges they faced in their daily lives, and examine how societal norms influenced their perceptions of others. For Laura, this was both eye-opening and humbling. She listened intently as colleagues from diverse backgrounds recounted experiences of discrimination and microaggressions they had endured, not just at work, but throughout their lives. Their courage inspired her to confront her own biases more honestly. One particularly impactful exercise involved role-playing scenarios where participants practiced responding to difficult situations with empathy and understanding. During one session, Laura played the role of a frustrated passenger who felt neglected by a flight attendant. As she delivered her lines, channeling the frustration she had often witnessed in travelers, she suddenly understood why small gestures, like offering a glass of water or simply acknowledging someone's presence, could mean so much. It wasn't just about fulfilling requests. It was about making people feel seen and valued. Outside of the training room, Laura took additional steps to educate herself. She read books about racial inequality, watched documentaries exploring systemic racism, and joined online forums dedicated to fostering inclusive workplaces. Each new piece of information deepened her awareness and reinforced her commitment to becoming a better version of herself. Slowly but surely, she began to see the world and her role within it through a different lens. Meanwhile, Marcus Thompson returned to his duties as CEO of Skyline Airways, using the incident as a catalyst for broader organizational improvements. He called a company-wide meeting to address the issue head-on, emphasizing the importance of treating every individual with dignity and respect. Our passengers trust us to carry them safely to their destinations, he told employees gathered via video conference. But beyond safety, they deserve to be treated with kindness and fairness. That responsibility falls on all of us. Marcus announced the launch of Skyline Cares, a comprehensive initiative aimed at promoting inclusivity and cultural awareness across the company. The program included expanded diversity training for all staff members, revised policies to address workplace misconduct, and opportunities for employees to share feedback anonymously. To demonstrate transparency, Marcus also invited independent consultants to evaluate Skyline's practices and provide recommendations for improvement. Laura became one of the most vocal supporters of Skyline Cares. Determined to turn her mistake into a force for positive change, she volunteered to lead workshops based on her own experiences, standing before groups of colleagues She openly shared the story of her encounter with Marcus, admitting her errors without hesitation. "I let my biases get the best of me," she confessed during one session. "But I've learned that growth starts with accountability. If we can acknowledge our mistakes and commit to doing better, we can create a workplace and a world that's fairer for everyone." Her honesty resonated deeply with her audience. Many employees approached her afterward to express gratitude for her vulnerability, saying it inspired them to reflect on their own behaviors. Over time, Laura transformed from someone defined by her misstep into a symbol of redemption and resilience. Her journey became a cornerstone of Skyline Cares, serving as living proof that change was possible. For Marcus, watching Laura's transformation filled him with a quiet pride. He knew that leadership wasn't just about setting goals or enforcing rules. It was about empowering others to rise above their flaws and contribute meaningfully to the greater good. By choosing compassion over punishment, he had given Laura the chance to grow, and she had seized it wholeheartedly. Together, they proved that even the most challenging moments could yield valuable lessons. As weeks turned into months, the impact of Skyline Cares became evident throughout the organization. Employees reported feeling more connected to one another and prouder of the company they represented. Passenger satisfaction scores improved significantly, with many travelers praising the warmth and attentiveness of the crew. In surveys, customers frequently mentioned how interactions with Skyline staff made them feel respected and valued, a testament to the success of the initiative. Marcus continued to travel incognito whenever possible, observing firsthand the changes taking place within his airline. On one such trip, he noticed a young flight attendant going above and beyond to assist an elderly passenger struggling with mobility issues. When he complimented her later, she smiled brightly and said, "It's because of Skyline Cares. We're learning to see people, not just passengers." Though the road to true inclusivity was far from over, Marcus felt hopeful about the future. Every interaction, every policy, and every decision shaped the culture of Skyline Airways. And while incidents like the one on Flight 427 served as reminders of the work still needed, they also highlighted the power of accountability and empathy to drive meaningful progress. As the plane soared through the clouds, Marcus leaned back, in his seat, gazing out the window at the endless expanse of blue sky. Below him stretched cities, countries, and countless lives intertwined by shared humanity. He thought about the countless journeys yet to come, both literal and metaphorical, and the potential for growth in every encounter. For Marcus, the sky was no longer just a destination. It was a symbol of limitless possibilities, guided by the belief that respect and understanding could bridge even the widest divides. Months had passed since the incident on Flight 427, but its ripple effects continued to shape the lives of everyone involved, and the culture of Skyline Airways as a whole. Laura Campbell, once weighed down by guilt and self-doubt, now walked through the airport terminals with her head held high. She wasn't the same person she had been before that fateful day. The journey of introspection and growth had transformed her, not just as a flight attendant, but as a human being. Every interaction she had with passengers became an opportunity to practice what she had learned: empathy, patience, and respect. Her colleagues noticed the change in her demeanor almost immediately. Gone was the frazzled, impatient woman who used to rush through her duties with little regard for the emotional nuances of those around her. In her place stood someone who took the time to truly listen, whether it was helping a nervous traveler find their seat or comforting a crying child separated from their parent. Her newfound approachability earned her compliments not only from passengers, but also from her peers, many of whom began seeking her advice on handling difficult situations. One evening, after completing a long-haul flight from New York to Tokyo, Laura found herself sitting in the crew lounge with Sarah, the lead flight attendant who had supported her during the initial fallout. They sipped coffee together, reflecting on how much had changed over the past few months. "You've come such a long way," Sarah said warmly, leaning back in her chair. "I remember how shaken you were right after, well, you know. But look at you now. You're practically leading the charge for Skyline Cares." Laura smiled softly, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. It's funny, she admitted. If someone had told me back then that I'd be standing in front of rooms, full of people, sharing my story, I would have laughed. Or cried. Probably both. She paused, her expression turning thoughtful. But honestly, it's been healing. Not just for me, but for others too. When I talk about how I messed up and what I'm doing to fix it, I see people nodding along. Like they've been there too. We all have blind spots, don't we? Don't. Sarah nodded in agreement. Absolutely. And that's why initiatives like Skyline Cares are so important. They remind us that none of us is perfect, but we can always strive to do better. The conversation shifted to the broader impact of the program within the company. Since its launch, Skyline Cares had become more than just a training initiative. It had evolved into a movement. Employees across departments, from ground staff to pilots, had embraced its principles, weaving them into their daily routines. Even passengers seemed to notice the difference. Social media platforms buzzed with stories of exceptional service and heartfelt moments aboard Skyline flights, further solidifying the airline's reputation as a leader in customer care and inclusivity. For Marcus Thompson, the success of Skyline Cares reinforced his belief in the power of leadership rooted in compassion. As CEO, he understood that running a global airline meant navigating challenges far greater than any single incident. Yet, it was moments like this, the quiet victories born out of adversity, that reminded him why he had poured his heart into building Skyline Airways in the first place. On one of his routine undercover flights, Marcus found himself seated next to a young woman named Priya, who was traveling alone for the first time. Nervous about flying, she confided in him during takeoff, explaining how anxious she felt about the turbulence. Without hesitation, Marcus reassured her, sharing tips he had picked up over years of air travel. By the time the plane leveled off, Priya was smiling, her fears eased by his calm presence. Later, when the flight attendant serving their section approached to offer drinks, Priya remarked, "Everyone here has been so kind. This is my first flight and I was so scared, but everyone made me feel safe." Marcus glanced at the attendant, a familiar face from earlier workshops, and gave her a subtle nod of approval. He didn't need to say anything aloud. The pride in her eyes said it all. Moments like these reaffirmed his faith in the ripple effect of positive change. Each act of kindness, no matter how small, contributed to a larger tapestry of goodwill. Back at Skyline's headquarters, Marcus gathered his executive team for a quarterly review meeting. The agenda included updates on Skyline Cares, passenger, feedback, and upcoming projects. As presentations unfolded, Marcus couldn't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction. Employee engagement scores were at an all-time high, and customer satisfaction ratings reflected a noticeable improvement in service quality. More importantly, anecdotal evidence poured in from employees and passengers alike, highlighting the tangible impact of the initiative. "We've made incredible progress," Marcus said toward the end of the meeting, addressing the room with quiet conviction. "But let's not forget that this isn't the finish line, it's just the beginning. Building a culture of inclusivity and respect takes constant effort. It's not something we achieve overnight and then move on from. It's a commitment, one that requires vigilance, humility, and courage." His words resonated deeply with the team. They knew that while incidents like the one involving Laura were painful, they served as critical reminders of the work still needed. Progress wasn't linear and setbacks were inevitable. But each challenge presented an opportunity to learn, adapt, and grow stronger as an organization. As the meeting adjourned, Marcus lingered behind, scrolling through emails on his tablet. One message caught his attention, a note from Laura herself. It was short but heartfelt. "Dear Mr. Thompson, I wanted to thank you again for giving me the chance to turn my mistake into something meaningful. Your decision to focus on education rather than punishment changed my life in ways I never imagined. I hope I continue to make you proud." With gratitude, Laura Marcus read the email twice, a smile spreading across his face. He replied simply, "Laura, thank you for showing us all what accountability and growth look like. Keep shining." Best Marcus in the weeks and months that followed, Skyline Airways continued to build on the momentum of Skyline Cares. The program expanded globally, reaching employees and partners in every corner of the world. Stories of transformation, like Laura's, became part of the company's DNA, woven into training modules, newsletters, and even marketing campaigns. Passengers responded enthusiastically, praising the airline not just for its punctuality or comfort, but for the genuine warmth of its staff. For Marcus, the journey underscored the importance of staying grounded despite his success. He remained committed to traveling incognito, using these trips to stay connected to the heartbeat of his company. Whether chatting with passengers, observing flight attendants in action, or simply watching the world unfold outside his window, he cherished the lessons each flight brought. And as for Laura, she carried the memory of that pivotal day with her always, not as a source of shame, but as a reminder of how far she had come. She often thought about Marcus's words during their final conversation. We all make mistakes. What matters is how we choose to move forward. Those words guided her every step of the way, shaping not only her career, but her outlook on life. In the end, the story of Flight 427 was more than just an account of conflict and resolution. It was a testament to the power of accountability, empathy, and second chances. It showed that even in moments of tension and misunderstanding, there lies the potential for growth, for individuals, organizations, and society as a whole. And, as the planes of Skyline Airways soared across continents, carrying countless dreams and destinies, they did so with a renewed sense of purpose, to connect people, not just physically, but emotionally, to remind them that despite our differences, we are all part of the same sky,